Hello, YouTube friends. Welcome to my channel. My name is Raisa Giselle, and this is presenting Portal to the Heart. I would like to welcome you and talk to you about some stuff that has been going on in the media. I've been tuning into the whole Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni lawsuits, and I've been tuning into it since when it happened last year, mostly because I always saw it's in regards to what happened on the set of the the movie It Ends With Us, and I always saw the books that It Ends With Us books by Colleen Hoover. Every time I went to Barnes and Noble, whenever I would go book shopping, I always saw it, and the title itself intrigued me mostly because I love generational trauma, healing from it, um, studying it, why it happens, how it happens. I never got the book though because of the cover. Like it seemed too not deep enough for me. So that itself, and honestly, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. That's the first thing, but I did. I totally did. I don't regret not getting it though. I might eventually get it since I saw the movie. But I would see people that would read it, and I would ask them like, "Oh, how do you like the book?" And they're like, "Yeah, I like it." And then they would tell me that there's a whole series of it, that there was more than one. It still didn't intrigue me enough to get it. Um, but I did see the movie. At the time, I was also following Justin Baldoni's podcast, Man Enough, because I was doing a lot of soul searching, deep um, deep healings that was going on within me. And I found that podcast because at the time I was searching for a lot of Dr. Garbo Mate's. I'm not really sure how to say his name. Dr. Garber Mates or Mate's content, especially about trauma. He even spoke about ADHD, things that were closely related to what I was going through. And he also spoke about his own journey and his own healing. Him, as a doctor himself, was unhealed and made a lot of parental mistakes. And since my healing journey started because of my parenthood, it was very closely related to his stuff. So, me searching his content, I came across the interview that Man Enough did with him, which I thought it was awesome. Then I was like, oh, well, I saw Jane the Virgin. I know this guy. And I didn't consume too much of his things. I'm not really a person who searches, except for like with Dr. Gilbert, except for like things that intrigue me. Mind you, when I first heard about Dr. Garber Mate, I don't know, like the algorithm just brought him to me. Um, and then that's when I search. So things first get brought to me, and then I become more of a interactive searcher on either people, places, things, topic, or whatever. I don't know. It might be a ADHD thing where you just hyper focus on something and you consume a lot of it. But the way things work for me is that usually I'm thinking about things or contemplating about things, going through things, and then next thing you know, the algorithm just shows it up for me. Synchronicity, if you will. So that happens to me a lot, like a lot. So at the time when I first heard about Dr. Gilbert, obviously I went down the rabbit hole, deep dive, and that's something I do a lot. As a conspiracy theorist from way back when, Um, but also as someone who's very left brained, uh, and now I'm getting into my right brain a little bit more and letting things flow. But I like to kind of understand how things happen, or what makes a person tick, like what makes a person evil, what makes a person good. So when I heard about narcissism, obviously searched, you know um, first, obviously the algorithm showed me the people who I needed to search, because I wouldn't have known them. I wouldn't have been able to search them without even knowing their names. Algorithm just brought them to me, and then I would just search them up. So Dr. Garba Mate was one of them. And um, so I started not consuming too much, because I get bored very easily. I'm not a very good follower because things just fall off my plate. But I started seeing more and more of the Man Enough podcast, things that closely related to me or what was going on in my life. And so at that time when I saw, and then it's crazy because I saw the movie, and then next thing you know, I always felt like some people say, like, oh, the YouTube algorithm, it does bring you what you search for, but for me, it just brought me what I needed. So, and I understand how it works. Social media's algorithm. I do that with TikTok. Like, I'm on spiritual TikTok. I'm not on dancing TikTok. I'm not on um, fear side of TikTok. But if something from that area needs to come to me, it will just show up, which is random. Um, but anyhow, the YouTube algorithm brought to me the Chris Kirsty's Flaws video of congratulations on my little bump, um, with Blake Lively. And that honestly didn't surprise me, because I've always had a feeling um, about her. I was never really a big fan. Never really liked her. No, not for any particular reason. It was just a feeling. And this is also something I want to talk about, is tuning into our feelings, feeling the vibes of things, and trusting your gut, trusting what you feel inside your heart. So I thought it was odd, because during the promotion of the It Ends With Us, I could see like most of the cast with um, Blake Lively. Nobody really showed up with Justin Baldoni. And then the interviews I would see with Justin Baldoni is just him being a really stand-up guy. Like, you can tell that he's got a really kind soul. And then I got on kind of like celebrity gossip talk, right? Which is crazy. I don't even know how I ended up there. But it happened right after I saw the promotions of It Ends With Us. And full disclosure, I did not go to the movies to see that movie. I am so sorry. I don't really do. I mean, unless it's like something that I extremely like, I'm not gonna pay for a ticket to go. But anyhow, I did see the movie. I got my ways. A lot of people do. Anyhow, it was just really odd. And then I started seeing a lot of people kind of like disgusted by the way she was promoting the movie. And I was loving those people. Some of them were like super hilarious. I'm like, okay, these are like my kind of people. Like, I get it. And it was funny because I was on a TikTok, which I really like this girl, Bohemian Diva. She's awesome. Like, she's really funny. I haven't been consuming her for a while because, like I said, I'm not a really great follower. Um, but she had this thing that she would say, "He is not your ex." And it's funny because it's true. Like, a lot of people would project how they felt dealing with their narcissistic boyfriends towards what's going on with the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. And I honestly, even though I was raised with a narcissist, I had narcissistic people in my life, or even people who weren't exactly narcissists, but even my last relationship wasn't, he's not exactly a narcissist, but he did have the same narcissistic tendencies that my father had. So it's like you could recognize those once you like get out of the fog. um I actually think once I got out of the fog of pain and trauma that I was living in, I started to see things more clearly. And then the same signs, I started seeing them where I should have seen them before. Like, come on now. But I didn't, I was too in love. But, anyways, um, I do feel like sometimes when you live with trauma, you tend to attract the same traumatic events. It's like it keeps replaying over and over and over until you heal from it, or you learn the lesson that was meant to be learned from it. I think that was what they call like trauma bonding, because obviously he's not without trauma himself. So anyhow, not here nor there. I'll get there someday. But Bohemian Diva, like when she would say that he's not your ex, I would just like crack up because I'm like, you're right. Like, yeah. But once you're healed from narcissism, you can kind of like see. And if you're feeling energy, if you're feeling the vibes of things, you can kind of like see and understand and like know who has those narcissistic qualities and who don't. And as a fan of Gossip Girl from way back when, as a fan of the Traveling Sisterhood PMs or whatever, I forget the name of it, but I watched them all. I've watched all of Blake Lively's movies. My favorite was like Age of Adeline, probably because it has to do with like time, aging, things like that. Kind of like Benjamin Button is also a movie that I really like. Time Traveler's Wife, movies like that. I really like them. Anyhow, not really a fan of her as a person though. And I think it was because I could tell that she, in my opinion, was very narcissistic. Even since back in the Gossip Girl days, I could just tell. Because, like I said, when you live with that from a young age, you kind of like know. Like, I don't know if it's you get trained, like your subconscious trains you to know who you need to walk on eggshells around, who you can be opened around. But anyhow, um, I do remember reading one of the comments in the Bohemian Divas TikTok page, one of her early videos from when the drama was starting with Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, where some people were saying that Justin Baldoni was narcissistic because Blake Lively came out saying that he had sexually harassed her or something like that. I don't know, something like that. Honestly, I didn't believe him because, like I said, things have energy. The truth, it has a frequency. You can feel the truth, which is why when you hear people say the things that you know are truth deep down in your heart, they resonate with you. when you hear people tell a lie, you kind of like know it, even if you don't want to admit that you know it. We all have that, and we can all tune into that. Maybe if we peel the layers of what's going on in our lives. But anyhow, I saw someone say, well, I had a narcissistic husband and he was charming towards others, and no one ever believed me that he was narcissistic. And then I commented on it and I was like, well, yeah, that's how you should know that she's the narcissist in the situation and not him, right? Because at an early age, having lived with someone with that same energy for a long time, I would even like tell my cousin, like, because she would be praising my father and she would be like, oh, I love him. He's the greatest. And I'm like, not everything's as it seems. And, I was very vague about it. I was never confrontational or like straight up telling her. Because at the time, I didn't even know the word narcissist. I didn't even know I was experiencing trauma. I was just living it. When you're in it, you don't know what it is. You're just in it. It's just your reality at the time. But I would tell her, like, yeah, he's not as good as you think he is, right? And because she would only have small interactions with him, she would always tell me that I was wrong. Until one day she spent like probably a week or a week and a half with him. And then she told me, like, yeah, you were right. Like, he's not as good as, I thought. And the reason for that is because narcissistic people can't hold on to their life for too long. It's like a mask that they have, the charming aspect of themselves. It's a mask, and that mask cannot stay on for too long. It becomes like too much for them to bear. They start showing their true colors at one point or another. So a narcissistic person is not going to be charming with you for like a whole month, because you're going to see snippets of the narcissism coming in and out. It's never going to be that way. They can't hold it. But I was still like all up in the drama. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, my life is boring at the time. I'm like doing a lot of healing. I needed something else to like take me in and out of that whole deep wounds that I was healing. So I was just basically consuming all of this celebrity stuff. But then I noticed also that when Kirsty Flaw put out her video, it was kind of kismet. It really was. It was meant to happen when it happened, because at the time, and I'm not an astrologer, I don't know what was going on with the energies. I just feel them. I just know when something is going on because I can't sleep, or just some deep healing wounds that the collective is healing. I never know exactly for sure. I'm not a psychic, so I don't know, but I could feel things. So I know around that time, the whole collective was healing, or I'm going to say it kind of grows, kind of like a pimple coming to boil, with the whole narcissism energies in the world. Not only because of the whole Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni situation, but even me talking to other people, and they had no idea what's going on. They had no idea or cared for real. Like, they still don't care about Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni in their drama going on. But in their own lives, those people were also experiencing seeing narcissism, either in a partner, in a family member, and whatever. And they were like learning about it and then learning to heal from it. So it wasn't just Justin Baldoni and going through it with a narcissist, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor. Do not take my word for it. This is just how I felt and what I still feel and believe. And I saw the same way that I was back then that Justin Baldoni would act. That he was like people pleasing and being overly nice. And he still is actually, because I still listen to some creators that talk about whatever comes into the docket of the lawsuit. And they're like, well, Justin Baldoni just said, I'm praying for her, right? Even though he went through so much drama, and I'm pretty sure trauma with her, he would still say, I'm praying for her, which is big in what I call them the heart people, where there are two groups of people: people who hurt people, and hurt people who hurt themselves because they can't see themselves hurting others. They hurt themselves. Um, so they end up becoming people pleasers. They end up dealing with narcissists, unfortunately, because narcissists are really attracted to like empaths and good-hearted people because they can control them. They can look at Lou. Let me move away from him a bit. Do his thing over there. They can control and manipulate them, the empathic people. And also another thing is that even empathic people can become narcissists if they don't watch themselves or keep track of how they're acting and how they're making other people feel. So I was thinking, like, I think there's a kind of like a scale of narcissism where there is, I don't know, 0 to 200, 200 being like Diddy, and the whole stuff that he's done, and people like that do horrible things, people that you would call, these people are evil, they're so narcissistic, they're evil. And then there's people like my previous relationship, which he's a great person. He just had narcissistic tendencies, which I don't believe he's a narcissist, but there were similar things. Then there's people like my father, who's probably somewhere in the middle, not completely as evil as Diddy, but did a lot of narcissistic stuff that hurt a lot of other people. Anyhow, I forgot where I was going with this. But I do want to talk about learning discernment and to pay attention and trust what you feel, especially in your heart. Like, it's really hard sometimes, especially because a lot of people like me, we end up putting blocks in our hearts to protect ourselves. Even though I went through it with a sledgehammer, my heart got open like completely, and I had to go through a dark night of the soul first, though. But there was a lot of crying involved. So if we tune into that heart center and the things that we feel, we can discern from things that we read, even things that we can see with our own eyes, right? Because not everything is as it seems. Things that we read, and we can kind of like know whether things are real or not. And even though I do believe that there are different realities, like my reality might not be the same as your reality, and we could be in the same room and not experiencing the same realities. We can be in the same house and still be experiencing different realities. But there are certain things that we know are real because we feel them. And not everything that we feel is 100% correct, because sometimes if we think it first and then we feel it, then it's not correct. But I believe if we feel it first and then we think it, it could be correct. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. This is just my thoughts, when I'm thinking how it works. It could be wrong. I mean, we'll see. But it is funny because, again, like I said, people, I would speak to people who had no idea about this whole thing. People who have seen, um, people in my family, in my life, who have seen Jane the Virgin and have seen Gossip Girl and know about narcissism, but they're really not into celebrity gossip. There were people who didn't know about narcissism that were experiencing it in their lives at that moment when it's happening on the big scale to Justin Baldoni with Blake Lively, and people who knew about narcissism because they experienced it at a young life like I did, who still didn't care. So there I saw two different groups of people. And it's funny because the second group that knew about narcissism, which I feel like this person is just really in tune with their feelings and like extremely aware of the energies of the earth or the world or whatever it is. This matrix, whatever, right? When I mentioned to them the whole Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively thing, I didn't say it exactly like that. I told them after, but I was like, "Do you know who Justin Baldoni is?" And then I would say, the guy from Jane the Virgin, and do you know who Blake Lively is, the girl from Gossip Girl? With the whole Justin Baldoni thing, they wouldn't. They would be like, "Oh yeah, I know who he is." With when I mentioned Blake Lively, they were like, "Oh yeah, I know who she is. I never liked her." Still, again, for no apparent reason, right? Just like me, didn't have a reason to not like her. I just didn't. It just She just doesn't resonate. And I've had people who I didn't like in the past, and they ended up becoming my best friends. So it's just whatever, right? Most of the times we judge people by whatever it is that's going on in our minds and in our hearts, whatever it is that we're dealing with, and then we meet them and we're like, "Oh my god, I was completely wrong about them." So who knows? I could be completely wrong about Blake Lively. I just never liked her. I felt like she really was just like her character on Gossip Girl, even after. I did like I said, the Age of Adeline. I never felt like she resonated with that character much as a person. Um, but the other person I spoke to that mentioned to me, yeah, I never liked her. She was like, I was like, definitely Team Blair all the way. I'm like, me too, completely, like, facts. But then the more I saw interviews of her dealing as herself with people, it just kept cementing why I didn't like her. Which I was just like, she just has that narcissistic energy, in my opinion. Um. So yeah, this is right now. I feel like Justin kind of like took on this this thing, like his soul took on, and a lot of people were calling it the David versus Goliath thing, where, well, there was I don't know if it wasn't the New York Times, obviously, because the New York Times is like we'll get into that another time, but there was a, not sure if it was the Daily Mail, some publications made a thing about it, and they were like David versus Goliath. They never said who was David and who was Goliath, but most of us following the case consider Justin Baldoni to be David, and Blake Lively and her crews dragons to be Goliath. Um, and at that time, like, we're just like, yeah, Justin is definitely David. He's definitely like the little guy fighting the big guy, you know? Um, and I do feel like his soul took on this purpose kind of like to shed light, because it's it can get really like, what can I say? Like, it can get really sticky, the situation, where I've actually known, not personally, but through someone really close to me that does know this person personally. I've known people who've gotten accused, falsely accused, and have ended up in jail for, being falsely accused, which can get really like muddy. And I've always been a person, like, even though I love fighting for the rights of women, especially because I come from a country that what I used to say is that the whole women's movement never happened in my country. Coming from a country like that, I do love like women's rights and believing women, right? And I know that there's a lot of women who scream at the top of their lungs and they don't get believed because their Goliath are too big for them to fight. So even though I do believe in all of that, I still do know that, um, kind of like the Heard and Johnny Depp trial, men can get victimized too. It's not just women, and the same way I don't believe in, like, this whole narrative that it's women are always the ones that are the victim. Women are always, women can be bad too, is what I say. And I've had this conversation with people in my life also, because I've met many people who've been hurt by men, so badly hurt that they're like, I hate all men. And I'm like, well, you can't hate all men, especially now when you have kids and you have sons. I have a son, and it's like I could be mad at this one man that hurt me at that one point, but I have to be aware that not all men are created the same way not all women are created the same, right? The same way not all Dominicans are created the same, or all Americans, or all Cubans, all Irish people. Um, we can't just continue to put people in a box and say, well, this is the box they belong in. We need to start breaking open that box. Anyways, I do believe that Justin took this on, like, his heart is big enough to take on this role and of being the David of our time, or of this drama, this thing that's traumatizing probably towards him and the people in his life, and not let it consume him, because now he's like still praying for her. I guarantee you he's still praying for her. Like, even as things come up in the docket and we learn new things, he's probably still praying for her, right? Because he doesn't want any harm to come to her. He just wants the truth to come out. Kind of like the law of one. Those of us who've read the raw materials, and I do truly believe that as well, that we are all basically one. If I'm hurting that stranger that pissed me off, then I'm also hurting myself. So, anyways, this video has gone on for too long. I'm just gonna say that whoever watches this, at whatever time we watch this, I'm going to set out a prayer, um, or a meditation intentionally to help Justin Baldoni, to give him more courage, to give him more strength, to give him more stamina to continue on with this, because this is an important thing that his soul is overtaking. Um, I do believe that he is the right one to go through this, and I am grateful for him and his soul that he took on this journey. And I want to welcome him to the new earth because we all know he's going. Like, she could stay with her thing in the old earth, like whatever. But we all know and his people and his family and everyone around him is going. But this is what we're fighting for. This is the new earth that we want. And eventually we will all have telepathy. We won't be able to lie anymore. And those of you who have seen the telepathy tapes, the the kid on the first episode said, I wouldn't have this gift if I was lying, if I was a liar. So it's like you can't even lie to be able to use telepathy. And I do believe this is what the new earth is going to be like. We're all going to be having telepathy. And people who are narcissistic will not be able to keep on their mask, not even for an hour, because telepathy. But anyways, thank you, Justin. Thank you for all of those who are fighting for him, who believe in him. I hope we can all send him love from our hearts, from our soul, him and his wife and everyone around him, everyone who believes in him, everyone who is helping him. Thank you. Bye.